Greetings, geeks and pop culture lovers, and welcome to the third and final installment in our collaboration between Wizards, the podcast guide to comics, and Popgeeks.com. We are bringing you a behind-the-scenes look at Zenescope Entertainment. Once again, I'm Adam Pope.
And I'm Michael Canetti.
So this time around, we're excited to welcome a co-founder of Zenescope Entertainment who launched the publishing entity in 2005 and 18 years later has continued to guide its success into the world of comics and beyond. So we're excited to have him with us. Hey there, Ralph Tedesco.
Hello. Thank you for having me, guys.
Well,
I want to mention live to your viewers, if you're watching this background, I apologize. Again, it's barren of what I wanted to hang up. But eventually there will be Zenescope artwork donning this wall. And so when you have me back, it'll be much more exciting.
And I've got tons of Zenescope artwork to show you. So wait till you see what I've got in store. I really went deep. I personally am a huge fan of Zenescope. I've been reading issues of the comic since, I don't know, maybe 2011 or so.
Nice.
I actually went and did a deep dive in all of my comics this evening to try to find some of the earliest issues that I was reading, and I was picking up, like, honestly, the first book that caught my eye was Red Agent, and didn't know much of anything about it. Just started reading that as were my like gateway to it, and then eventually I was reading at Free Comic Book Day, and I saw this Grim Fairy Tale Free Comic Book Day issue that I picked up at one point, and the rest is history. Wait do you see what I have to show you. You've got a fan here, so I'm trying not to nerd out too much because I'm super excited. I've spent a lot of time, even during COVID, watching the live feeds on Facebook. I'm a VIP member from Zenescope.
Oh, nice. I didn't see at the VIP event, by the way. You got to come to one of them.
I have to, actually. I believe me. If my wife can let me get away for a night for my kids, it's
we got to talk to her.
I'm down for that. But yeah, no, I've tuned into so many of like the movie night specials on Friday nights. We've had cool guests on and talked about different issues. I have some of the issues here. I'll show you some of them as we go through. I'm super excited to have you here. I've been hyping this up for Adam for a while because I'm very pumped to have you.
Adam.
Yes, I'm on the other side. I've been learning along the way.
He's like, who's this guy?
But one of the things that I've been dying to ask you is, what made you want to start a comic book company, like an imprint? Like, what was the brainchild behind that?
I wouldn't have been able to tell you what an imprint was back then. Like, I think we just had this idea to publish a comic that we were both writers, struggling screenwriters, and I was living in Los Angeles. I'm from Philly. Our company's based in Philly, but my then writing partner, Joe Bruscia, who's now my business partner, I was visiting for a wedding. I was back home, and he mentioned, like, hey, what do you know about comic books? And I honestly didn't know anything. I knew nothing about comic books. Like, I really knew very little about it. I didn't really read them growing up. It just wasn't something I got into for some reason. I don't know why. So I was like, I just know, like, I watched like the Superman movies and stuff like that, superhero movies growing up, but I didn't know much. So he was like, well, I got this idea, like, what if we wrote a comic book, published our own comic book, and maybe we could try to turn, like, if we publish something good, we could try to turn it into a movie. And, very naive way of looking at things. We were in I was in my mid-20s then. He was like a little older than me, but, we didn't really know. We were just like, oh, they're making movies and comics. And I was like, well, I don't know anything about superhero. Like, I don't think I can write superhero stuff. Like, it's just not my cup of tea. Like, they have already done everything. And he was like, no, go watch, like, Road to Perdition and History of Violence. Those types of movies were out around that time. And I was like, oh, like, those are based on comic books? Like, I didn't know. Once I realized, like, movies like that could be made from comic books, I thought, oh, I could write stuff like that, I think. Like, I didn't know how confident I was as a writer, but we also had, like, an idea for Grim Fairy Tales, which was simple as it could get, was take the original fairy tales and then make them more with like we wanted to turn them into like Twilight Zone episodes, like Tales from the Crypt. We were big Tales from the Crypt fans. So I was like, what if we take the original fairy tales, like the original stories, which are dark already, flip them on their ear, and we can just come up with like these one shot, like fun twisted tales that no one was really doing then. I mean, you would think that had already been done, but it wasn't being done. And so we just did it. We just were like, let's hire an art studio. Let's hire an artist. And we got Al Rio to do, if you guys know his work, he passed away years back, but he was a great artist, and he did his iconic Red Riding Hood, adult Red Riding Hood, not like little Red Riding Hood, in the woods in like a nightie, and a werewolf behind her. And it was like such an iconic cover. I just knew right away. I was like, that cover's iconic. Like, you didn't see anything like that before. And I just knew it was going to be awesome.
Is it from this? Is it this trade, or like this early on, or earlier than that even?
Well, that first issue is in that collection.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
I don't know if the cover's in there or not. If there's a cover gallery, I doubt it. But the long story short was like, we published this first issue with not much. Like, we didn't realize how much publishing was going to cost. We didn't know what we were going to do. We printed 10,000 copies before we had a distributor. We went to Comic-Con in 2005 at Wizard World Comic-Con Philadelphia and set up a booth. And I had like my girlfriend at the time and a few of her friends dress up in cosplay, fairy tale cosplay. And, you know, back then cosplay wasn't what it is now.
No, definitely not.
And it's weird. I say back then, it was not even 20 years ago, but back then it really wasn't that big. And when we went to Comic-Con, we were the booth with the hot babes, right? The booth babes. Even Seth Green came by the booth and was like hanging out with us because we had these cute girls there. And we sold out of we didn't sell 10,000. We brought like, I don't know, maybe 1,500 copies, something like that. We sold them all. And we got Diamond to pick us up that weekend. And we were now in Diamond. And we were like, well, are we a publisher now, I guess? Like, we had the company name. We were kind of thinking of going through like Image, or doing like publishing through there used to be a company called Speakeasy Comics. I don't know if you guys remember that. They were like an Image. They didn't last. So we were talking to them about going through them and publishing through a different imprint. And then when we got Diamond, we were like, let's just do our own imprint. That was how it started. So it was a long-winded way to answer your question.
That's a great question though. No, I mean, it's kind of cool because you also got into the game before everyone was putting everything through, you know, Kickstarter to try to get it. And, you know, you did it organically, just going to a convention.
There was a Kickstarter then. We would have crushed.
I do have a Kickstarter statue, by the way.
Yeah, nice. Look at that, man.
I have the metal card as well. Oh yeah, I got it all, man. Let me tell you.
There you go. True fandom. I don't know what Adam's doing, but we got one.
Well, what I'm curious to know, Ralph, is the thing that does make your company stand out, you know, we'll kind of get into this a little bit later, but, you know, you talked about Booth Babes, you talked about, you know, you guys do the variant covers that have a little bit of a sultry edge to them, but also just the name Zenescope, like that really will get people's attention. And, you know, I heard at one point that a lot of companies, you know, during kind of the independent boom, were trying to start their company name with an A or trying to start with a D or an M. So they're near DC or Marvel in the Diamond catalog. But you guys went to the end of the alphabet. So what's going on there? Why Zenescope?
It's funny. That was a happy accident. Well, yeah. If you look up, like, you'll see a million combo companies with A names. It's kind of hilarious because they want to be in the front of the count. Finally, we made it as a premier publisher in Diamond, so it only took us 18 years and you know, all these other companies to leave Diamond, but that's another conversation. Yeah, no, the name, honestly, everybody tells us to come up with a really good story and be like, you should come up with something really cool because I always tell it like the honest way, which is we just liked the words. Like Joe was stuck on this like scope. He wanted this scope in there. Like I remember us like brainstorming, and he kept going like like Interscope Records, such a cool like band, Interscope, or like, and I was like, and then I was just like, we were throwing out like random other names, and Zen kept like, oh, what about Zen? Like this balance of like this harmonious like I don't know. And he was like Zenescope, Zenescope. He's like, and then Joe was just like, that's it, Zenescope. And I was like, Zenescope? And he's just like, yeah, I think that's it. And I'm like, so Zen and Scope with an E in the middle. And he's like, yeah, let's do it. And he's like, I have a great idea for our logo. And he was like, a dragon, and then you have Zenescope, and the S, the tail of the dragon's the S. So you have Zena, and then Cope. I was like, okay, it's fine, let's do it.
That's hilarious.
We just ran with it, and it was there. And then everybody's like, now everybody's like Zenescope, or they don't know how to pronounce it, but Zenescope is essentially the name.
But you do even have a podcast now called Everything Zen.
Everything Zen, which is on hiatus. We kind of took a break from it, unfortunately, because it was just so hard to put down. It was much easier during COVID. I don't know how, like for us, like we just had so much going on, and like our one podcast producer, Mark, actually ended up leaving the company or something new. So it was like, all right, now we don't even have our podcast producer.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Everything Zen was our podcast, and hopefully we can come back with it because it was actually a lot of fun to do.
It was a good podcast. I listened to several episodes, so
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, it was fun. We got some good guests on there too.
So funny enough, I'm gonna parlay into my next question in a minute or two, but I was at New York Comic Con. I forget what year it was. Do you remember what year we had this this pin you had, the Statue of Liberty pin?
I don't remember.
I feel like it was like
what year we're in.
Yeah, it was either like 2016 or 2017, and I ended up going to the booth, and I'm talking to Dave Franchini, and he, like the constant salesman that he is, got me to buy.
Oh yeah, Dave is a salesman.
He got to buy this trade, which I love. The first Cinderella serial killer. He signed it.
The one he writes, of course.
But he also did get me to buy this book, which is my favorite Zenescope story, bar none, and it's The Courier. That you wrote.
Courier. That's so funny you say that, because Amber, the girl who works for us, Amber, used to make fun of me about The Courier.
This is a fantastic book. It's it's amazing.
That's hilarious. Yeah.
I also got a few things while I was there. I got this poster.
Hey, go back to The Courier a second, because that cover, Adam, look at that. That is not a sexy woman on the cover. Just
no, it's true. Yeah, I
want you to know it's not every Zenescope book has a sexy girl on it.
And what's cool about her? Like she's just like a almost like a Mad Max kind of a character.
Yeah, it's like a Mad Max vibe to it. I mean, it was inspiration from that. Was one of the inspirations for that.
But oh man, so I got this poster, which I love. This thing is so cool.
Mike DeBalfo.
And then this right here at that one convention.
Yeah,
that's a great one. Yeah. I even have the comic book from that issue as well, and I saw that poster. I was like, I must buy that.
That's a good one.
The really good
Ralph, I gotta ask, when Michael is showing these things to you, do you just have like the cash register cha-ching, cha-ching?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we got some other stuff for you, Michael. It's right over here.
Oh, please. No.
You can start selling on this
oh, believe me, we've got I can go deep. I've got all kinds of stuff. Like
some Kumanaki over there, I think, right?
Oh man, I've got so many of her. This is like one of my favorites of all time. This is amazing.
Underworld homage, yeah.
So one of the things that I find really cool about Zenescope is it focuses on the heroes that, for lack of a better term, identify as like female empowerment, and while also leaning into like conventional archetypes like Robin Hood, is very similar to a Green Arrow type, or Belle, who's kind of I like a la like a younger Batman or Nightwing kind of a character. when you were mapping out the universe in the early days, did you set out to create like archetype style characters, or just wanted to lean in more like the grim fairy tale, Snow White and that kind of stuff?
We knew everything going in. We had it so intricately mapped out. We are going to, no, we didn't know. It kind of evolved very organically. We never, I mean, early on, we didn't even think about like a shared universe or a universe. It wasn't that wasn't even like a thought initially. Not until I think we started publishing like what the Return to Wonderland series, which really took off. That was huge at the time for us, when we published the Return to Wonderland stuff, which was a much different tone than Grim Fairy Tales. But that's when we started to think, okay, this could be a shared universe. So we have our Grim Fairy Tales, and we have Wonderland. And Joe had written a script, Neverland. It was a screenplay, but it wasn't finished. And then he wanted to turn it into a comic book, which was, it takes Pan, and he's the evil vampiric type being who lives off of children's souls, basically soul vampire. And hooks the good guy, who's this like homeless beggar in New York and like with a one arm, and the Hook has to kind of go into Neverland and save these kids. He's the only kid who ever escaped Neverland, so he like twisted this Neverland mythology.
I love that. I love that idea that like if you look at it, you can see the turn in where Peter Pan could be actually the villain, that he's taking these children kind of thing, and it makes sense.
And really dark too. Like I remember early on, our managers, our entertainment managers who were repping us were like, you can't kill kids in the movie. You can't kill kids, because we killed kids in the con. And spoiler alert, not all the kids, just a couple. Now they kill kids all the time, but like back then, it was like, you can't kill kids. But with Neverland, with Wonderland, we were like, oh, we can kind of create this universe. Like, what if these realms, they're different dimensions that surround our own that we just can't see? Earth, we don't see these dimensions beyond Earth, but they coexist with Earth. And it was just a natural thing where we had reinvented all these fairy tale characters. Fairy tale characters are generally female. We didn't set out with this agenda where we're gonna make female characters. It wasn't the idea. It was sort of like when we're reinventing fairy tales, your protagonists are generally going to be females.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started kind of coming up with ways to turn everything. Sorry, Joe's texting me. I think he thinks he was on this podcast. He's like, am I supposed to be on? No, you're not on today, dude. It's just about me. Yeah, that was sort of how it started. Just very organically, accidentally in a lot of ways. And then we started to map things out more and more and get more into the creating the universe. And then it evolved from one thing into now it's like this shared universe, and it is a little bit more superhero-esque, right? It has a vibe of Marvel, like fairy tale characters as Marvel heroes in a way that initially when we started the company, I was like, oh, I'm not going to write that stuff because that's not, but now it's what we do.
Yeah.
But it's not all we do. We do a lot of horror stuff.
Oh, I sent Adam a picture of a pile of comics I have behind me. I laid them all out just to kind of get an idea. I had like 3 boxes I was digging through. There's like Grim Tales of Horror or Tales of Terror. There's
now too. We're independently financing a feature. We just
really?
Yeah, we just shot the first we're doing an anthology style.
Oh,
so
cool.
We just shot the first short film of that anthology. So
did you guys write? Did you write it yourself, or
that one I didn't write? I wrote one of them. We're going to be shooting. We hired a writer director who directed the first one, and Joe and I are producing it. So we were shooting overnights in LA a couple weeks ago. We had to do it non-union because of the strikes.
Yeah.
So we got, but these actors are really good too. So,
but honestly, I mean, I shot a feature about 2 summers ago. We used all non-union people, and we shot in like a week, and they all were fantastic. And
Yeah.
I'm a screenwriter and filmmaker by trade as well, and I teach film and creative writing and stuff like that. And so, I love all that kind of stuff. And you know, there's so many of these stories that literally you could rip the pages right out and convert it into a screenplay in
Yeah.
no time. Um, and that's something that I find so interesting is, Adam, or people might be like, oh, well, you have like, a hot girl cover kind of thing, but it's not like that. Like there's so much, it's so different than that when you go and read the stories. They're so well written. They're all very well thought out. The pacing is always phenomenal. I was telling Adam recently, like one of my favorite books of the last, 2 years is Man, Goat, and the Bunny Man. It's such an insane story, but it's amazing.
Well, that was, yeah, that was, I think, a night of me, Joe, and Dave at a story conference during COVID, just locked in a room and down the Jersey Shore, and Joe threw that out and was like, he was in his little notebook of all of it, and he's like, let's do something weird, and I was like, okay, and he's like, what about Man, Goat, and the Bunny Man? And I was like, what? And we just started running with these ideas, and that was the first issue. Like we outlined the first issue that night, and then Joe wrote it, and it was just off to the races because that was one of the more successful books we had published.
People, you couldn't keep it on the shelves in comic shops. People were buying all the variant covers, second printings. They just wanted this story, and it was so good. Like it was so fun.
Yeah, sexy bunnies. Just kidding.
Through this series, I've actually been reading and realizing what is, behind the covers, what is going on, and that isn't all that you guys are about. And so I've really enjoyed the stories. I think you guys have a quality, editorial staff that's really leading you guys in an interesting direction. But the question I have is what also sets you guys apart, and this is something that Michael has pointed out to me, is you guys aren't doing like, just years and years of monthly titles. You guys are doing these story arcs. It might be 3 issues, might be 6 issues, and then they can be collected in a trade and all of that. But did that come from, again, a conscious choice of saying, no one wants to sit through 12 issues or, 2 years of story to get somewhere? Or how did that develop?
I think we always figured we started realizing like the longer a series goes on, the more readers you're going to lose over time. So I think like the shorter, so we started doing like a more 4 and 5 issue series for a while. Then now we're doing a lot more of the one-shot issues. Like, so they could be like, sometimes they're 36 pages, sometimes they're 48 pages, and sometimes they're 72 pages, and they're just like one-shot stories almost. So they're all contained, because we started realizing that whenever we published a special issue that was like a 48 pager, those would always sell as much as the 22 pager sometimes, or more. So I was like, I think it's like sort of the Netflix idea, the binging idea of like, especially like nobody wants to watch their TV shows week to week anymore. And people certainly don't want to read month to month anymore, as much. I don't think. I think it's hard to like sustain that model in this sort of frame, now, right? Like 20 years ago, sure, but now everything's instantaneous for us. So like we're spoiled as hell. I didn't say the F word. We're spoiled, and I think the idea was like, let's try more of these like sort of longer, like, so as somebody could buy an issue, it's a $7.99 issue, let's say, but it could be 72 pages. So you're getting like a mini graphic novel, and you're finishing a whole arc. So it's a lot easier to digest, I think, for people. And it feels like, I think you're getting more bang for your buck. If you're spending $8.99 even on a 72 page book. I mean, let's say you're selling comics for $3.99 at 22 pages each. Versus a 72 pager. To me, it just makes more sense. And it's tough. It is tougher because you need to work well more ahead of time, and you need artists to be able to work quickly, because if an artist is doing 72 pages, that's a big commitment for him to do 72 straight pages. But same thing is, if you have a 4-issue series, the same artist is going to still do 4 issues, or you hope they will. So yeah, I mean, I think like with us, we always experiment with the different lengths and but the longer those, I mean, obviously with Grimm Fairy Tales, I mean, that's an ongoing, that's been published month to month for 18 years. We haven't just going for 18 years straight. So that's just always going to be a, you know, I mean, probably one of the longest running, or the longest running indie comic out there. I don't know what else is.
Yeah, that's super impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's good. I mean, like literally every issue of Grimm Fairy Tale is phenomenal. They're all fun. They're interesting. They move the story along, and even still with like the one shots, which I think kind of sort of stemmed out of COVID a little bit, because the shift I think happened around 2021. If it was a little bit,
Yeah. We were talking about it around COVID, I think, like getting people trying these new formats out, and just seeing, we were kind of experimenting. So it's been a couple of years, but not too long.
And what's cool about them though is they're sort of like almost like gateways. You buy one for, and oh, that's cool. And then you can sort of go to the next one shot and so on and so forth, and you're still learning more about the character that you're reading, whether it's Belle or Van Helsing or whatever. And it sort of evolves your knowledge, as opposed to like having a 6 or 12 issue arc of something. And you're just like, all right, issues 4 through 7 are kind of throwaway. Each one is sort of interesting and different. It's a different villain that they're facing a lot of times. And the way you twist certain villains, like you've had like, I'm blank off the top of my head. Belle was facing like, it was like this, like the Sandman or something like that, or some sort of like a, like voodoo type people and stuff like that. And there's always cool different characters that they're facing, and the art is always, because like you say, because it's one artist doing most of the work in the book, if not all of it, and like it stays consistent. It's not like, oh,
Yeah, that's
issues 3 or 4 is a different person jumping on the book, and you're like, oh, I was paying for this guy to do the art, now I'm seeing what is that all about.
I mean, and that will happen no matter what you do sometimes, unfortunately. But
yeah, I mean, and
keeping artists consistent, finding good stable of artists, which we have now, working with a lot of the same guys who we know are reliable. That took a long time to kind of get to that point too, like working with the right interior artists who are dedicated and who are really fast and professional.
I wanted to ask that question, actually. Like, you have a very loyal staff of writers, creators, artists, cover artists that love to create work for you guys. And I think you create an environment where it's welcoming for them to let their imaginations go wild and have fun with it. And I think that's kind of a rare thing nowadays, which is cool. Like,
yeah, I think a lot of publishers, some feedback I've gotten in the past is like some publishers want to try to, we've never been this way really, but like try to like prove that they know what they're doing or know what they're talking about, and they want to over give notes, like over, like some artists are like, I can't stand working for so and so because they give 1,400 notes on a cover, and it's like they can't. They're either trying to be perfectionists themselves and get the cover perfect, or over analyzing it, or they're just being a pain in the ass to prove that they're the man.
Right.
So I think we're pretty good with that. Like we're pretty easygoing, we'll give notes. And I used to be the editor-in-chief of the company, but now, I moved into a different part, part of the company now, but because I would have been pulling my hair out if I stayed as editor-in-chief. It's such a tough gig. It's a thankless gig that David Wall now has to carry, and David Franchini. But yeah, we know what we want, we know what we like, and we can be tough. But once you're in with us and we know you're a professional, we know what you know, we know what you're doing, we kind of let you go.
So one of the questions that I've been dying to know is like every comic company now is the multiverse and this and that, and they're leaning so heavily into it. But Zenescope utilizes what they call the realms. Can
Mhm.
you kind of explain the realms, people that may not know what it is, and how they sort of like break apart and stuff like that, and different
Yeah.
avenues?
Yeah. So I mean, I touched on it a little bit earlier. So like the idea was the realms are like alternate dimensions
Hmm.
way, and that's where we came up with like there's Earth, which is the nexus. Earth, Wonderland, Neverland, Oz, and Mist. So Mist is the only one you probably never heard of. You're like, I heard the other three. So Mist we came up with, but the others are like, so all these sort of worlds exist beyond our own. We just can't see them from where
Hmm.
we're at. And then there's these beings that are either from Earth or they're from one of these other dimensions that, you know, may have heightened abilities in this dimension, in this world, or across all the world, all the dimensions, or just in their dimension. So it really depends who those beings are, and they're called there's highborns.
Hmm.
There's a whole mythology behind everything. So like our main character, Seela Mathers, who was sort of our version of the Crypt Keeper early on in Grim Fairy Tales, she would show up early on and she would hand somebody the fairy tale book, and they would learn a lesson. And that was like the early goings of the Grim Fairy Tales. It was like almost like I mentioned, like Tales from the Crypt meets fairy tales.
Hmm.
And our Crypt Keeper was Seela. Seela was then kind of evolved into this like highborn character that was the guardian of the Nexus. So she was the Earth guardian, and she could cross into the other realms. But she was the protector of Earth against these enemies from these other dimensions. And then all these other characters, these very like Belle, Robin Hood, and a plethora of Hellchild, plethora of our female lead characters, all have their place within these worlds, right? These dimensions,
Hmm.
depending on who they are. And that's sort of the general idea of the realms, I guess. It's the basic.
That's probably the best way to explain it. I mean,
Basic,
it's
yeah, gives you the base of what we do, and like it's just a cool way of like bringing in these other beings that like come from. So like when we have these fairy tales and mythologies in our world, it's kind of like that's because these places do exist. We just can't see them.
Ralph, I had a question for you because going back to the beginning where you were talking about you're a screenwriter hoping to break in that way, and you weren't necessarily looking to get into comics. And now that
Right.
you've stayed in comics for all these years, coming up on 20 years and not too long, what have you learned about the comic industry, about fandom, about making comics? Like, what is it that excites you, that keeps you doing this?
Um, well, I say a lot I have a couple TV writer friends that have written comics for us. Um, One of them, she's actually become a big comic book writer now too. Her name's Latoya Morgan, and she writes for Boom a lot. But her first comic book she wrote for us, and she was a fan of ours early on, and we just had become friends through a general meeting in Hollywood. And you know, she was very much in. She just loved comics, and when we first started writing, we first started having a write. I was like, listen, it's not gonna. You're writing. She was writing for like big TV series, and I'm like, it doesn't pay. She wanted to write a comic book. I'm like, it's not gonna pay you well. Like, you're not writing comics does not pay well. Like, let's just get through that. Like, we don't have that kind of budget. We just don't, or we'd be out of business. And she's like, I don't care because like I know people are reading that. Like people like when you're creating a TV series, or you're coming up with your world of your TV series or pitch, or you're even writing a screenplay. It's amazing, right? It feels great to have that written, but the chances of that getting made is so slim. It's so hard to get a TV series made. I mean, it happens all the time, but think of the thousands and thousands of writers that write all these things or come up with these great ideas and concepts that they pitch to studios, that never get picked up and never get made. No one will ever see those ideas on TV or feature films. There's scripts everywhere that have been written that never got produced. What I love about it is like I know no matter what I write, I'm going to have an audience for that. Somebody's going to read it. Somebody like Michael. At least I know Michael buy it.
You got me, baby.
Nobody else. I think that's for me what's cool is knowing I have an audience. And I know there's haters and there's people who will never read a Zenescope comic in their life and have no inkling to and would think we're just a TNA company. That's fine. As long as I know we have our fans that are into it. And like that's cool to be able to know. And when me and Latoya, I think Latoya hit on that, and then my friend Kevin, who's a TV writer, kind of said the same thing. And I was like, yeah, it never dawned on me why I enjoy this as much as I have. But it gives me the ability to create, like the Courier. It's a universe I created. There's only 2 series out, and I'm hoping to wrap it up with a 3rd one eventually. You know, I created this world and this universe that otherwise wouldn't have ever been seen the light of day without a lot of luck, right? If I wrote that as a screenplay to get even now, like I had I was working with Bradley Cooper's company for a while, trying to develop it as a screenplay. You know,
there is like some sort of Courier movie out there though that was like
there's a Courier movie that was, I think she's also a motorcycle girl too.
Yeah, it's like loosely based on your comic, and I think
I hope not, because they never paid me.
Yeah, well, it looks a lot like her. And
it does. It came out like a couple years after the comic, but I remember seeing a trailer and I was like, that's annoying. But then I was like, the story was also, I think, different, but
I watched about 10 minutes of it and I turned it off. I was like, this is not the comic at all, thank goodness.
No. It's hard. It's hard to get. I mean, there's things you have development. It's true. Development hell is a very, very accurate term because we've developed, and that's the thing. Like at least we get. So to answer your question, at least we have people reading our stuff. At least when I create something, I know it's not just going to be in my head. Like because I've written scripts that I love and I'm very attached to. I've written a comedy that me and my buddy wrote a comedy together years back called Laser Boys, which is about a laser tag. It's like dodgeball with laser tag. We love it. Like we think it's the funniest thing ever, but I know the chances that get made are like about this slim. But I mean, you know, things that you write now for comics, I know will have some sort of audience. So that's cool.
That's great.
And you know, like my 2 favorite characters are Red Agent, who is, like you said, is a highborn, who's kind of like, she's sort of like a hybrid, almost like werewolf-esque kind of a
werewolf,
like werewolf, Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf kind of combined.
And then yeah, I like what I like about Red that series is we kind of introduced, like it's got like a little bit of a
James Bondy kind of feel.
Yeah, Mission Impossible vibe to it. So there's like spy, like it's like it mixes like these 2 genres together. That's what
which is super fun. And she's always like fully covered up pretty much. Like she's not new. And then, you know, my other favorite by far is Bell, and I even have the Bell box.
No, man, he must have loved interviewing Franchini. He must have loved this.
Oh my god, we had a blast. I could have talked to him all night long. He cracked me up. But yeah, no, like they're just like, especially with Belle, like she's more or less kind of human. She doesn't really have a lot of superpowers. She's just sort of, you know, grown up in this sort of legacy of hunters or warriors, if you will, hunting down demons and monsters and stuff like that. And I find that kind of interesting because she's human essentially, you know, and which is really cool.
Right.
I got to show you some things that I've been dying to show you. I have some of my like white whale comics that I had to show you. So this this is my white whale. I love this cover. It's one of my favorites of all time. It took me forever to find that. My favorite cover artist is Carla Cohen, and I just recently picked this up.
Awesome. That's
cool. This is the best.
So here's what happened, Ralph. So Dave Franchini goes, hey, let me check the archives. Let me see what we have back at the office and see if we have that for you. Because Michael was talking about how much he loved it. Then Dave's like, oh, we don't have any left. And then the next day, Michael's like, guess what I got?
And this is a deep cut. This do you remember when there was a superhero variant cover of The Flash?
That's yeah, of course. That's the Balfour, I think.
Yes, DeBalpo, yeah. This is another beautiful cover that I absolutely love. But I've got so many things like I even have the bottle opener.
That's Mercy bottle opener, right?
Yes, it is. Yes. So yeah, I have a huge collection of Zenescope stuff, pins, metal cards, all that stuff. I couldn't even find everything because I've got so many things, but it's, believe it, the comic book has really like impacted me. Like the stories really connect with me. I buy these books over buying DC and Marvel and Image just because I enjoy the characters and I enjoy this different universe with different storytelling. Now that you've got this idea for this this movie that you started shooting in anthology form, are there other stories you think you're going to be trying to optioned for movies, stuff like that, or television? I mean, there's with Netflix and all the streamers and everything.
Well, that's an ongoing process, to be honest. I mean, that's something when I left the editor-in-chief role behind, that was sort of our when we got Van Helsing on air, which was nothing like the comic book. I won't lie to you, it's very, very, very different, completely different. They just bought the comic to make this, like, they like the idea of a female Van Helsing. They like that. I don't even think they read the book. I don't know. So they changed everything. And that's when I kind of got more, I wanted to get more involved in integrated into any of our future adaptations to make sure it was a little bit more close to what we were doing. So, I mean, over the years, we've had stuff optioned multiple times and developed multiple times. I have something right now at Screen Gems, which we announced, which is not a book that probably you might not even have read, called Paradise Court. Maybe you did read it.
I know of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rare, it's like a out there deep cut horror title we published and that they optioned because they were like, we love this, and so we're working on that with Screen Gems. We have a great screenwriter, and then there was a strike as soon as he got hired, so who knows what happened. We are working on like a Mango and the Bunny Man TV series right now. We're working on what else are we working on? There's a few things. Monster Hunter Survival Guide.
You had a cool 3-issue horror story called Possession.
Oh yeah, Possessive. With Adam Goldberg, the creator of the Goldbergs.
Yes, fantastic, fantastic. That would be a great series as well. It's funny, it's quirky. Yeah,
he owes me a script actually. Adam created the TV show The Goldbergs. I don't know if you guys ever watched it.
Yeah.
He's from Joe's hometown. I grew up 10 minutes from Joe. Adam and Joe grew up like literally like 2 blocks away from each other. But they never knew each other growing up. We all met because there was a writer named Hans Rodinoff who wrote our series called shoot, what the heck? I can't, now I'm blanking. Conspiracy. He wrote Conspiracy for us. And he works with Adam, they're writing partners. So him and Adam, and we met Adam, we went on the set of the Goldbergs one day and got to hang out, and Adam's this huge fanboy, like bigger than, like he would dwarf any of our collections. Like it's and they pitched us that concept. They're like, what if there was like this nasty poltergeist ghost haunting this house and killing people, but there was such a loser that lived there that the ghost almost took pity on it, and then they fell in love and started to bang.
It's like, it's hilarious. It's amazing.
That sounds great. Let's do that. And it was like, it's a comedy, horror comedy, and we published it, and then they're actually writing the script for it, and then we're going to try and, again, even though it's Adam Goldberg who's created a huge TV series, and he's also the creator of the new Muppets TV series. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's so hard to get something made. So like hopefully we get that made or we get some heat with that. But that's something we mean to produce as a feature.
It's written. It would work perfectly as it. It really would. Yeah, it's
yeah,
super.
those guys are funny. Those guys are really good writers. They're really good writers, really funny guys. Adam's super funny, but you know, it's definitely when you see somebody like something like the Goldbergs or Muppets, that's more family oriented. But this obviously is not.
But it's still great. It's a weird kind of family though, in a way. It's
You
just
hooked
kind of
me again. Last time it was Man Goat and Buddy Man. Now I gotta check out Possessive. This sounds
Now it's a
good.
guy who's having relations with a ghost because he gets divorced and he's a loser and starts having sex with a ghost. With like a nasty grudge ghost. It's not even like a good-looking ghost. It's a nasty
That's
grudge.
great, man. All right, so as we close out, I do have to ask this because we've kind of addressed it here and there throughout the interview. It's something I give Michael a hard time for, but now I know better, which is variant covers. That's part of the business. Every publisher does it. Marvel's over there getting J. Scott Campbell to draw sexy
Right.
Jane. He's drawn covers for you. Why do you think you guys have a stigma on some level? And Marvel or DC,
Marvel
if they're
and DC
doing those
I don't
sexy
know.
things. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think because when we came out, the industry was in this like lull. Like it kind of the 90s, I recall. And again, I wasn't a 90s buyer. Like I didn't know anything before I started the company. So like I wasn't a guy in the 90s who knew anything about sexy variants.
Bad girls, yeah.
Bad girl covers. But I knew there was like a sort of a bubble and it burst in like the late 90s or maybe midnight, whatever it was. And then it died. And then nobody was really doing it at the time as much. Or when we came on the scene and we just went full-fledged with it because it made sense. Like once we got those Al Rio covers, it was like those things were just flying off shelves. It was like these gorgeous fairy tale. I think it was the concept of like, oh, these are fairy tales and they're sexy and they have this dangerous vibe. And we just ran with that concept, and we were doing so many bad girls, but we were doing so many like fairy tale female characters. It just made sense to do sexy female because we knew the demographic was, especially then. Now you're seeing more female readers, which is hilarious because we would get females coming to our booth and going, I'd be in the comic store with my boyfriend, bored as hell, and I saw your books and I had to buy them because they were awesome looking, because they were relating to the fairy tale aspect of the book. And then they would see these sexy covers and they would like start to read a page through and be like, oh wait, these girls are kick-ass. They're not like in the covers, their boobs aren't falling out and they're not naked running around. They're just badass chicks. But back then we knew the demographic was men and it was like skewed older. It wasn't young men. The comic book reader demo was always like, 25 to 55. It wasn't ever 13 to 22. It wasn't that. And I don't know, like now I kind of used to get annoyed with people. Like I'll see nowadays you see like companies like kind of just rip off blatantly what we do, like blatantly just do what we do to try to get covers sold. And I'm not going to name names, but I could name many names, and it is what it is.
I know who you're talking about too.
Those are the same guys that would rip us in a second, like that hate us. It's kind of funny. So very weird industry. Like the people in the other publishers in this industry, there's some really weird like hatred for one another. Like it's to a point of like, or at least toward us. For a while, I think especially when there was like this sort of like I don't want to say like it was very anti sexy, like I don't know, like mid 2000, especially like 2011, 12, 13, around then it started becoming like this vitriol. You'd see it on Twitter all the time. Like people would just like rip us and come at it. Not really as much anymore. I think that people have realized like the super weird agenda of like trying to cancel us for having sexy covers is maybe over. I don't know, at least for now. But like we would get crap if you see any sexy cover. It's not even that's not even ours. It'll be like, oh, this is Zenescope. The Zenescope, blah blah blah, and it could be like the worst cover we would never publish. And I'll see something that's terrible artwork, and it will just have it boobs out, and it'll be like, oh, it must be Zenescope. And I'm like, and I used to get annoyed, but then I'm like, wait, it's actually kind of like it's a branding thing. Like we're known, and like that's what people want to associate us with. Any sort of sexy cover, like it's interesting. So I kind of took it as like maybe now it's sort of just it's just what it is. It's like it doesn't affect me anymore. I used to get annoyed by it. I used to tweet people back and like say stuff. Then I'm like, what am I doing? Like, who cares? Like, if they want to associate Zenescope with anything, it's a good thing. Really, any press is good press, mostly. So I guess it's one of those things I can't explain. But we've become sort of like the Playboy of comics, maybe maybe it's the Maxim of comics.
Yeah.
Like I don't understand it, but it is what it is because we aren't the only company doing it. But maybe we're the biggest company that's doing it as consistently as we are, and we don't run from it. We're not hiding from it. I think a lot of companies are trying to hide from it.
Yeah, and it feels like, the type
I
of
don't know.
reader you want ultimately is somebody who's intelligent enough to go into the store and then open it and say, oh,
Yeah,
okay,
I
now I
mean,
see what this is about. Yeah.
you hope. There's only so much you can do. I get it too. Like I get the idea. There's been plenty of comics before us that probably just did boobies on the cover, or sexy cover, and then you open it up and it was probably trash. I'm sure.
Oh, I've seen a million of them for sure. Yeah.
Before we ever started publishing, this happened, and it happens now. Like I know there's cover publishers now that just publish sexy covers, and then they pretend they have some sort of story inside that's complete. I've read a couple of them, and I'm like, they're unreadable, but
Yeah.
like it's part of the industry. So I understand it, where somebody just literally judge a book by its cover. So we try to get out the message and the branding of like, hey, come for the covers but stay for the stories, because we really do take pride in the stories we're telling. The people who rip us are people who are generally not reading our books or have a preconceived notion of what we do, or just don't like us and just want to rip us just to rip us. But we do get it. That happens too in this industry. I think like, especially with like creators or other publishers that never really made it or are struggling, they hang on to this like disdain for people who have had some what they perceive to be big success or success. So there's a fruit fly flying around. Yeah, so like that's the best way I can answer it without rambling more.
Yeah, no, that's
No,
a
that's
lot of good
perfect.
points there. Yeah.
So, I am a father of two young daughters that are 6 and 3, and they're very into princesses of the Mouse House. In particular Cinderella. And I was going through my well, this is what happened last night. I'm going through all my comics and I'm pulling stuff out, and then my oldest daughter Grace looks up and goes, "Dad, that's Cinderella." And I was like, "Not that Cinderella."
Right. That one I wouldn't recommend. More for the violence than
Yes. But it's a bit, but
Franchini's sick, twisted mind.
Oh, the twist on Cinderella is so good though. I love the whole idea of it. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it's fun. It's actually that's what Franchini pitched that to us years back and was like, really want to do this, like make her really crazy and sadistic and sort of like a crazy, like a sadistic Deadpool.
Yeah.
And because Dave's got such a weird, unique, he really does like have a weird, unique way of thinking and creative mind that like when we're in a story conference and we're me, Joe, and Dave are all very different, but we all mesh together when we're creating. Dave will throw out the weirdest stuff. Like he'll just go on a tangent. So sometimes you're just like, oh my God, dude, stop. Like, what are you doing? And then he'll hit something that you're like, oh, that's funny. That's good. Like that works. But he'll go out there. Like, I'm like, dude, I don't know what's going on in that world. Like, imagine taking a trip into his brain would be very disturbing.
So, like, I have a couple of variants we were talking about, like
There you
this.
go.
But the one thing I will admit, because like I said, I have young daughters, I don't own any Z-rated covers because
That's okay.
I wouldn't be able to display them. I would love to.
Not for everybody.
I love them, but I wouldn't do it. Do you know what a Z-rated cover is, Adam?
Oh, I do. I've been on the website. I've seen.
Yeah, Z-rated is topless. The topless cover. We don't do, for those out there, we don't do anything more than topless.
Right. Yeah.
But some companies will definitely do more than topless.
One of my favorite covers that I bought through one of like the live shows a few years back is this sort of twist on, you did like of Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck, and I'm a huge Daffy Duck fan, and I love this cover. It's such a beautiful cover, and it's such a fun thing. And I even bought this because I'm a big Batman fan. I bought this like Joker-esque variant that Sun did, and there's just the cool thing about Zenescope is, whether it's the covers or the stories, there really is something for everybody if you're interested in comics and pick up something that's different than what you would normally see of superheroes. And that's part of the reason why, when Adam mentioned to me that we were going to have you guys on the show, I was like, I want them on. I want to promote their brand. I want to promote their stuff and show people that there's so much more to it. I'm saying this as an outside observer, but it feels like a very like family oriented sort of company. Everybody is very close knit. Even if you're on California and they're in Philly, like they have a good communication and they have fun with what they do, and they make great stuff. So if you're looking for something unique and you want to check out some cool books, you can message us on social media. I'll tell you, or just go to your local shop and pick up some books. I'm selling it for you. There you go.
Well, he's looking for a job. You got space for
I guess you're hired. I don't know.
I freelance if you want. I'll do whatever you want.
I don't know what to do. I don't know how much you need, but I guess you're hired.
All right. Well, Ralph, this is really fun. We had a great time talking to you. Want to ask, is there a project coming out? Is there a book? Is there something you want people to pay attention to right now? And where can they follow Zenescope and everything you guys are producing?
I am writing a new Grim Tales of Terror 72 pager right now, and check us out at Zenescope, Zenescope.
And check out their Facebook page. They do a lot of live events and live feeds that you can watch and just tune in. And
do a movie club every month. With the Clerks cast, Brian O'Halloran, who plays Dante in Clerks, comes on with Marilyn Gigliotti, and Crystal Starr, who is on Lego Masters, coming out on Fox, and we talk movies every month. We have one this Wednesday on our live streams.
Very cool. Awesome.
Great.
And again, it's a true pleasure to have you on the show. I'm thrilled to meet you and spend an hour with you and talk about comic books and just it's been a true pleasure. So thank you so much for joining us and hanging out with us.
I appreciate it.